Take it away, Josh.
Thanks, Brandon. Hey, good morning, everyone. My name's Josh Fincher. I'm the Schmersal SATECH product specialist. We're going to go through the SATECH product here that Heitek is stocking. So we can start off here by talking about the posts. So we have two series. The first one we're going to discuss here is the basic post, the basic series. And the basic is a 40 by 40 millimeter square tube. It's 2060 millimeters tall, or 81 inches. Okay. All the posts are powder coated yellow, safety yellow, and the thickness of the tube is 3 millimeters or 8 gauge steel. And they're stocking the welded base foot. Okay. Now the one part number for a post includes it's a kit, so it includes the post, the end cap for the top, the concrete anchors to lag into the floor, and also the fastening method to attach the mesh panels to the post. So all of those components come in one part number, which is nice. I know the aluminum extrusion companies have separate part numbers for every nut and bolt to put all that stuff together, where we just have one part number with the kit that includes all that stuff. Okay. So as you can see in that picture there's the welded base on there. There's also a small welded tab on the back side on the bottom there that allows for our fastening clip to slide down over the post, which I'll show you in a little bit. But it will set it at the proper height for the mesh panel to be mounted. And again, it's got all the holes there for the concrete anchors. Now, we've designed this at the height of 2060 to accommodate the ISO standards here. As you can see in this chart here, with the hazard, the height of the hazard at 1600 millimeters, which is about 63 inches. And if you're 500 millimeters away horizontally, which is 19 inches, the height of the fencing can be 2000 millimeters, which we're covered at. So for, an average hazard, that height that's, 63 inches up, you can be pretty close to it with the height that we have at 2000 millimeters. Okay, so that was the basic series. Now there's the strong series, which is a slightly larger post at 60 by 60 millimeters. And it has a large welded base plate as well on the bottom. And again, with that post kit, you're going to get the end cap, the fastening method, the concrete anchors as well. And here's just the picture of the base at the bottom. It's obviously a bit more rugged than the 40 by 40. Let's go here. Okay, so those are the posts. Now we'll get into the mesh panels. So there's 7 different standard widths of panels that we have, okay? It's a 20 by 20 millimeter steel tube outer frame. There's also a middle crossbar as well with the 20 tube. All the mesh panels are powder coated black, and the mesh opening is a 22 by 100 slotted opening. Now that's the inside to inside dimension for the mesh is actually 19 by 97 millimeters. So with the 7 different widths, we can join them together as well to hit certain dimensions that we may need for the perimeter fencing. As you can see in the panel combination chart there, by joining the panels together with our joining kit, which is just 3 nuts and bolts, you can get quite a few different combinations of widths there. And as well, we also have tuck kits that we can use that I'll show you in a couple minutes here to get to an exact dimension if you need to. But with the joining kits and all the 7 different widths, we can get within an inch or two of almost any layout that may be presented to us, right? So the other thing with the mesh there as well is you'll notice there's very few horizontal lines, which makes it very easy to see through. Okay. Okay, so the opening, like I was saying before, the 22 by 100 is the center to center. So the 19 by 97 millimeter slot size allows us, according to the ISO standards, to get within 120 millimeters or 4.72 inches to a hazard. So it's nice, you can get right up close. Okay. And the mesh panels are very lightweight as well. Our largest panel, that 1500 by 1900 millimeter tall panel, only weighs about 38 pounds. Okay. Now, the sweep underneath the fencing is 140 millimeters or 5.5 inches. And like I said, this here shows the two-piece floor bracket that is also available, which comes with a shim tool that sets the height at 140. But with the welded base that Heitek has, it sets it for you, so you don't need that shim. Okay, so like if we need to, typically in any cell, you're going to have an in-feed conveyor and an out-feed conveyor. And we'll need to cut a panel height down, like you can see in the picture there. So we have cut kits that allow for easy modification of the panel height or width. If you notice in that L1 and L2, that's what the cut kit actually is. It's a 1900 millimeter long piece of the tube and the C channel that you see there. So for the cut kit, you would just cut the mesh panel down in height or width using angle grinder, bolt cutters, portable bandsaw, whatever you have in the shop. Cut your tube and your channel down to size, and then self-tapping screws come with the kit. You just one on each end into the tube and then one in the middle, and you have your new panel size without any welding or painting or any special process. This here is just showing you an example of cutting the width down, and the tube and the C channel there will come, like I said, in a 1900 millimeter length with the self-tapping screws. Okay, so a lot of the times we get a request for yellow mesh panels, and we only do the black. We do not recommend any yellow mesh panels. It's very difficult to see through, as you can see in the picture there. And the ISO standards also recommends not using the yellow. When observation of the process is required, guards of perforate material should not be painted in bright colors. You want to be able to see the process happening. So the black is the way to go. And like I said before, there's very few horizontal lines in our mesh, which allows for easy viewing as well. Okay, so fastening methods to attach our mesh panels to the posts. We've got our fast clip. Okay, so each post will come with two clips. One slides down over the top. You see those tabs on there, which the mesh panels, the tube on the bottom is open, and it just sits down over top of those tabs. And then the captive bolt that is on there, you just tighten that nut down, and you'll slide the next one down on the top to contain the mesh panel. Tighten the two bolts, the two nuts down, and your panel's secured in place. And that is a captive bolt on there. You'll see the thread is machined down on the bolt. So you can loosen that nut, but it won't come all the way off the bolt. So maintenance people won't lose the hardware, which is a very nice feature. And then we also have the captive nut and bolt method. So basically, you just get 3 nuts and bolts to mount the mesh panel to the post. 9 times out of 10, we're using the fast clips for the perimeter fencing. Generally, you're just trying to keep people from getting inside an area, a robot cell, or stretch wrapping applications. But if there's ever a risk of something ejecting out of the machine and you need extra strength for the connection of the mesh to keep the mesh panels in place, we will use these captive nuts and bolts. So you'll see the tab on that bolt, the first time you insert that through the post and tighten it up with the nut, that tab goes inside and it's got the little prongs on it that won't allow you to pull that bolt completely back out of the post. Okay, so you can easily remove any mesh panel, and that nut there is knurled on the back side of it there. So the first time you tighten that down, it grips and sticks inside that mesh panel, so it'll always be on that panel. Okay, so if we're using the captive nut and bolt method to attach the mesh panels to the post, this impact test applies to that. So according to the ISO 14120 standard here, they've come up with this pendulum test that SATECH has tested the mesh panels with the captive nuts and bolts attaching to the post for this basic and the strong series. Okay, I have a video here to show that. So that's a 220-pound weight. As you can see, it's just deflection there. There's nothing actually breaks or tears away. Impact test has been done on the 60 by 60 as well for that. It just, the only difference is it just doesn't deflect as much as that 40 by 40 basic did there. Okay, doors. So we have many different types of doors for the perimeter fencing. The single leaf door here is the most common. Every door comes standard with the hinges and the magnet. There's a magnet latch and the pull handle, you can see in the picture there. And also comes with the crossbar and the mounting brackets at the top. Any one of our mesh panel widths can be used as the door panel. There are 2, 4, 6 holes, punched holes on either side of the mesh panel. Our door kits are all symmetrical. There's no left or rights for any one of our door kits, which is really nice. And for the single door, the upper crossbar accommodates up to the 1500 millimeter wide panel, or the 5 foot. But you can join 2 panels together and make wider single doors. So you just wouldn't have the crossbar at the top. Double leaf door here, also very common. We can do up to a 10-foot opening with the crossbar at the top. On the far right there in that picture, you can see there's a little C-shaped clip that engages and latches into the top bar. And with this door kit, I would also provide a ground latch, and then there's the slide bolt handle you see on the left there. So there'd be 3 points of latching for this type of door. All right, so the telescoping doors are also very common. We use these all the time. A lot of the time you may have an overhead crane bringing parts in and out, forklift potentially coming in and out. So we'll go with the telescoping doors here. We only have 4 different widths for the single here, the 800 millimeter, 1000, 1200, and 15. They're basically just 2 heavy duty drawer slides that mount to the front face of the fixed panel there. And then we also have the double telescoping opposing kits as well. We can do up to 3000 millimeters wide. Again, fork traffic coming in and out. These are the go-to door kits for that type of thing. And this guy here is pretty common as well. The sliding door with upper track, a little more cost effective than the telescoping, but we can do for the singles up to 3,000 or 1,500 millimeters for the single. Double opposing sliding door with the upper track there, we can do a 10-foot opening. And it's not shown there, but it will. All our door kits come with the magnet latch and handles. Now, for all of our doors, we have interlock brackets available. We have stock of our Schmersal brackets, the AZM201s, 300s, AZ16s, RSS16s. We do have designs for all of our competitors' brackets as well, but we do not stock those. Now, these brackets, they do come with the mounting hardware to mount the switch to the bracket and the bracket to the fencing as well. So nobody has to source any nuts and bolts, which is really nice. Okay, so this is just a quick animated video showing the basic series and how it goes together. Sorry about that. Pause it. So that there is our fast clip. Got the captive bolt. Mesh panel slips on top, and then the upper one caps it off. Tighten the two bolts down, and you're secure. This here is showing a bendable bracket, we call it. Allows you to do custom angles. Just literally bend it to wherever you need. Just an example of that sliding door with upper track we showed you earlier. Interlock handle. So here's our captive nuts and bolts. Matching the mesh panel. You can see the narrow on the bolt for the nut there. It grips into the panel. Okay, so applications out there that you come across, just some key points that or information that we would need to provide a good quote for you guys would be, is there interference with the base when we're laying out where the posts are going to go, where the operator's maintenance need access, how many doors are required, what style of door, is space limited, can they, swing doors are the most cost effective, but if there's you don't have the space to swing those open, do we need the telescoping, etc. If a man door is required, or can we have the header bar installed or not? And then the fastening method, fast clips or captive nuts and bolts, we need to determine. Interlocks, do the doors need a safety switch or just like a key lock of some sort? Cutouts, where the conveyor's coming in and out. Are there just any holes that that would need to be snipped away in the mesh? We can provide a vinyl edging for that. And then electrical cable, if there's any cable that would need to be run along the top, we have cable tray attachment brackets that we have to allow for the cable tray to mount at the top. We do not sell the cable tray, but the brackets we do have. Assembly instructions. So any kit that we would ship out, we provide assembly instruction package for that. This is just an example. The bill of material there in the upper left-hand corner, and then labeling all the components there. Okay. And then as well, we have for any accessory post, any kit we have these assembly instructions to make it easy to assemble. We'll send these out with the shipment. Just going to go through some pictures here of completed jobs that we have. This one here you see is our 4040 series post, the 2060 height robot cell here. There's a single leaf door right here. This one here, just wanted to show in that video, you might have noticed that bendable bracket. So you can do all kinds of funky angles. There's a double leaf door here. You can see with the slide bolt handle. It looks like they got an interlock mounted to that slide lock handle there. Just some warehouse perimeter fencing here, right? You can see it's very easy to see through our mesh and to see past that there. Robot cell here. So you can see here in this picture that we have the 60 by 60 posts mixed in with the 40 by 40 series. The fast clip system works just exactly the same. So you can use the 40 and the 60 together. This here's just a pallet wrapper. You can see on the front end there, we have light curtains mounted to the front, right? Just another example. This one here, we've got a stretch wrapper. This one here showing the telescoping sliding doors there. Okay. And that's all I got there. Thank you very much. Kartik, my colleague Kartik, he's up next here.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much. I will share my screen here.
And just as a reminder to all attendees, if you do have any questions, please go ahead and submit those through the Q&A, and I'll address those at the end of each section. And I do see your screen.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for highlighting some of the things. I think this is going to help me with my presentation, where I am going to talk about the next step in machine guarding when you're applying safety measures and solutions. So I'm going to take an approach of mixing. There's always a compliance requirement side of the things. where there are different standards, OSHA requirements where you need to comply with the requirements, obviously, and that's where what Josh went through with the safety fencing obviously come into play. But safety fencing is one part of machine safety requirements, but there's also other portion where the safety interlocking devices, the light curtains, area scanners, different safety equipments that would help you obviously make your machine safer, but also meet the requirement of the standards. So that's one portion. But now also, as a designer of a safety system, you also want a safety system where basically you have the machine uptime more than a downtime because of any failure in the safety system or any troubleshooting that needs to be done, or even prior to troubleshooting, we would have the designer would want to implement machine safety quite effectively without running into troubles as far as the engineering cost and the complications of the safety requirements. So this is where you have to understand what we can do and how effectively we can do things to meet the compliance requirements. And this is where I'm going to take some examples of different things that you see. And I'm going to take warehousing for an example, because these are very common machines that you see in any plants or any warehouses. Because anytime you're packaging a material, anytime you're shipping a material, you need some sort of pallet wrapping or some sort of pallet strapping or palletizer. These are quite common machines that go into warehousing industries, and I'm going to take them as an example to show you both sides, the compliance side as well as the solution side, where you can put things together more effectively and meet the requirements of the of machine safety effectively. So let's take an example of a palletizer. There are different types of palletizer depending on the type of material you're palletizing. You may have a consistent, boxes that where you don't necessarily need a robot palletizer, but in cases when you are basically not dealing with the consistent symmetrical design of the material that's being palletized, in that case, a robot would be needed, an industrial robot would be needed. And this is why many times we see industrial robots in such palletizing applications. And then once the material has been palletized, it goes into a stretch wrapper and gets stretch wrapped. Either a forklift operator picks it up from the robot cell when it exits, or it may be going into an automatic palletizer. It all depends on the requirements of the customer, the volume, et cetera, et cetera. But what we have to focus here is the robot cell. So if we take further into, as an example, a robot cell, and in this case, we're taking a palletizing robot as an example, and see what those requirements are and how we can comply with those requirements. So let's take an industrial robot standard, which is, or the robot safety standard, which is the NCRI RI 1506. The idea we have here, and if you remember, Josh was mentioning ISO standards is part of his presentation. I have referenced an NCRI 1506 standard, which is an American standard, but essentially the requirements are more or less the same, because we in North America also, as well as other parts of the world, we are trying to harmonize standards. And part of the harmonization, basically, what we did with the NCR 1506 is we adopted an ISO standard. And the ISO standard is ISO 10218 for industrial robots. And they're split into two parts, or two different standards for the ISO portion. But with the NCR 1506, it's still one document, but with two parts. The first part talks about the requirements from the robot builder or the machine builder, and the second portion talks about the requirements of machine safety, or the requirements of the industrial robot safety, from the integrator or the end user perspective. So if you look at the requirements on both the parts, if we look at the NCR 1506, or what Josh was talking about, the requirement here for the safety fencing, obviously it's talking about the requirement to do the risk assessment according to ISO 12100. Risk assessment is the first step of the way when doing any safeguarding. And that's something very important to highlight here. And I always emphasize customers to do the risk assessment, so that way they know the hazards of the machine much better. They document the hazards, and then moving forward in applying the safety measures. And part of the safety measures, which is where the NCR 1506 helps us apply safety measures in those taking care of those hazards, is a safety fencing. And in NCR 1506, there's a specific requirement where it talks about captive nuts and bolts, or in this case, our system uses a captive nuts and bolts, or fast clips. So the panels that go in together to make a safety fencing, the requirement here in section 510.4.1 in NCR 1506, it's asking for a captive nuts and bolts system. So their fixing system shall remain attached to the guards or the machinery when the guards are removed. So if a panel has to be removed, the mechanical component which holds the panel and the post together has to be captive. So in case after maintenance, if you have to put things together, you're not missing screws. That way people are not people are not forgetting to put things together, because the nuts and bolts are captive, very easy to put it together, and you're complying with the requirements. So this is one of the first requirements that I've referenced here. The second requirement, if you reference the application that we started with in the robot cell, we have the requirements for the emergency stop. So every robot shall have a protective start and an independent emergency stop. So that's quite basic requirement. I think any machineries you have seen a requirement of an emergency stop. Some machines may not have the emergency stop requirement, but this is a specific standard we are talking about for industrial robot, and it talks about requirement for an emergency stop. In that case, meeting with a second requirement where the yellow in background and red mushroom style push button with a latching mechanism, that's what's another requirement this talks about. And if you look at even the NFPA 79, which is a local standard, the requirements are coming from IC 60204-1. So the idea remains the same as far as the international requirement or the local requirements according to the national standards that we have available from NC. Another requirement that it talks about is prevention of unintended restart of the machine and proper labeling of the devices. So, or proper labeling of the control devices. So in this case, I'll play a small video here where the machine operator goes inside the robot cell, interrupts the light curtain, stops the robot, but as you can see, the machine operator presses a preset button and exits the light curtain and presses another reset button to start the system again. So this basically a measure that is applied, and I'll play it again, those who missed it. This is a measure applied here for unintended restart of the machine. So that's one of the requirement that it's talking about in section 532. But also labeling is very important. It's an indication of to the operator what you're doing. As you can see, you cannot call a reset that's inside the cell or the hazardous area a reset button because it's technically a preset. So proper labeling is quite important when we talk about certain requirements of the standard. So these are some of the things that you shall keep in mind as a designer, what the compliance requirements are, and you as a designer choosing those right components that can meet those requirements easily. Then another requirement that you see in the standard, especially the industrial robot standard, which is what we are taking as an example here, in section 583, it talks about enabling switches. And enabling switches are generally needed when you are dealing with teach pendant in robot cells. In a robot cell, you have to teach the robot what the way is, what it's doing, picking up, what it's picking up, and then where it's placing, for an example. And in section 584, it talks about the teach pendant and the requirement of the teach pendant, where you have to have an enabling switch with 3 position. So why is it a 3 position? It's because the middle position is the run position. If something was to happen and you have a hazardous situation, you can squeeze all the way in or let go, and the robot shall stop. So that's one of the requirement you have as far as the teach pendants are concerned. So you have an enabling switch, and that enabling switch is an emergency stop function. So obviously it has to meet the requirements of the same standard that we were referring to when we talked about emergency stop device. Okay. Another reference from the standard I've taken here is movable guard door, where you would need an interlock. Well, there could be an interlock requirement where you don't need the guard locking function, but in a lot of the cases, and if we take this robot cell as an example right here that we talked about earlier, if you are holding something such as heavy as the sandbag in this case, for an example, and you have a vacuum here, which is the end effector of the robot, it's holding this sandbag in place. And if you are not using a locking type or the guard locking type door interlock, then anyone can open the door and you could possibly lose air to your end effector, and that heavy sandbag, or maybe if it's an industry that's dealing with bricks, large size rocks, and it's being picked up by the end effector. The means of end effector could be anything. It may be pneumatic type or hydraulic type end effector, or maybe it has a cutting knife. Those type of hazards that exist may require a guard locking type door interlock. In that case, when you're using guard locking type door interlocks, there's specific requirements that the standards are looking for. And one of the requirements that you see in section 510.4.4 in part 2, it basically talks about the door lock or the door interlock needs to be closed and locked in order for you to meet the requirements for safety. That way, you are confirmed, even if there's a power outage, this door is staying locked in place. And that way, the safeguarded, the safeguarded space is safe without any hazard available to the operator. Another requirement that you see is to be able to release. So you shall not be able to be trapped inside if there was a condition where someone closed the door behind a machine operator while going inside the cell. In that case, this section that's looking for the requirement for someone to be able to have an emergency escape from inside the machine. So solutions available can help you meet these type of requirements as well. Another possibility of using, as you saw earlier in the example, you may be using a light curtain as a machine safety device. In that case, this example that I could play again, where the light curtain is being used, and again, it is another requirement that it's talking about where you shall have no unintended restart of the machine, and that's why you can create a preset and a monitored reset to be able to avoid such situation where a person is not in the view, and it still prevents restarting of the machine because you have done a preset inside the hazardous area. And there are various ways of doing it. Obviously, some light curtains have it built in, or you can have an external safety relay, or in the case of if you're using a safety PLC, you can do this function as well. Another requirement, or when the muting function is used according to the standard, muting is allowed in a robot cell where a pallet could be exiting. In the case of that robot cell, where a complete panel needs to exit and an empty pallet needs to come inside the palletizer. So that's, again, a very common application where muting is being recognized. Muting is a temporary suspension of the safety function of a light curtain in this case, and that is allowed by a few sensors set up in parallel or cross-section manner. It allows material to pass through while interrupting without interrupting the machine, and the sensors that mutes the light curtain or gives you the temporary suspension of the light curtain, that's done in a sequence in a proper manner where machine operator or someone does not try to manipulate the system. It has a specific requirement. It talks about in the NC R1506 in section 510.7, and more details can be found in that standard. Obviously, that's, again, the requirements can be programmed within some light curtains, or the requirements can be done externally via safety relay function or a safety PLC function. Another thing it talks about is when you're walking inside a cell, if it's a machine where a constant operation, where the machine operator loads a part in or removes a part in from a machine and has to constantly go in and out through a light curtain, for an example, then what are the means, what are the additional means where risk is higher and you may want to protect, and the preset function is not good enough because the cell is too large, because certain areas are so hidden, even the preset may not work well. In that case, and this is all determined by the risk assessment, like I said, from the very beginning, and that's how you'll be choosing these type of different components or these type of safety devices to meet proper requirements of your risk assessment and your findings in the machine. So safety mats are another way of protecting an unintentional startup of the machine, and this could be laid in your safety cell and would allow obviously not machine to restart without the operator leaving the hazardous area. So that's another section that it talks about certain requirements. Once palletizing is done, like I said, it could be a stretch wrapper that's usually used, and sometimes those stretch wrappers are connected with the machine, or sometimes they're just external, and they're single stretch wrappers where a pallet goes in and the top portion is rotating and wrapping the pallet, or the bottom portion of the stretch wrapper is rotating and wrapping the pallet. So a couple of different types. I'm sure you have one of them in your plant. So this is another example which I'm going to pick to show you some of the compliance and safety side of the things, as well as the engineering side of the things, to meet the requirement and comply with the requirement with much ease of engineering. So here is an example which you see here, and part of the risk assessment, as I said, according to ISO 12100, part of the risk assessment, we have determined that we have a need for 1 meter from the wrapper to the light curtain. So we have determined the light curtain is a good solution in this case, because the machine operator or the person that is loading the wrapper and the forklift driver who is picking up the wrap pallet needs to go in and out quite frequently. So obviously safety fencing in the area where a constant traffic requirement is needed in this case. Obviously that's difficult. In that case, a light curtain or a light grid is chosen in this case because you have enough safe distance calculation requirements, and if you refer to, once again, a local standard, but if you refer to any of the ISO standards, the idea remains the same. NCB 1119, which is another standard for general machine guarding, that talks about the safe distance calculation. And in this case, obviously, the requirement based on the stopping time of the stretch wrapper. Here, the requirement is 1,000 millimeter or 1 meter from the hazard to the light curtain. So if someone was to walk in, it takes about 1 meter distance to reach the hazard, and by that time the machine or the hazard has completely stopped. So this is one of the key points to note here is a safe time. Distance calculation is necessary when you're engineering such type of solutions. Especially when you're using optoelectronic devices as a light curtain. You will need to make sure the machine is stopping, what's the stopping time is, and then apply proper engineering to make sure you're meeting the requirements of the standards. Okay. Another thing to note here is the safety fencing. Safety fencing, you might say, it looks quite close to the hazard. Yes, it is closer because the requirement for the safety fencing comes from NCB 1119 section 7, again, which refers back to the same ISO requirements that Josh talked about, where the distance between the safety fence and the hazard is 500 millimeters, depending on how Josh talked about the rectangle, the mesh gap that would allow certain distance from the hazard. In this case, with the stop time analysis, we needed 500 millimeter distance from the fence to the wrapper, and it was met to requirements of the NCB 1119 section 7. Another requirement that basically based on the risk assessment, obviously we don't want it to restart on its own as soon as you exit the light curtain. In that case, a reset cycle is needed. And if you notice, there is a pull cable where the forklift operator can pick up the pallet and pull the pull wire switch, which is not a safety rated pull wire switch. It's for the reset function. And it's also meeting the requirements of NCB 1119, section 9.5 of the reset function in such situation. So these are some of the requirements are met, and you're applying proper safeguarding equipments and complying, machine safety requirements in general. So here's what I was talking about, the pull wire switch, which is resetting the light curtain for a reset function. So the forklift driver doesn't have to get off, and you can just pull on the pull cord in order to reset the light curtain after exiting the hazardous area, which is in this case a stretch wrapper. Another requirement is also, indication or the indicative means of risk reduction. And in this case, and again, we are meeting the requirements of the standard NCB 1119. We are making the machine safer. Section 981 .118 talks about operator annunciation for cycle start. In this case, the cycle start is built into the light curtain because the light curtain will illuminate for green when the light curtain has been reset. So that illumination indicates that the reset function has been applied and the stretch wrapper will start shortly. So that indicative means of requirements are also met. Instead of you can put a beacon on the top with an LED, or you can put a buzzer, any means. In this case, because the area is not so busy, some risk assessment determine that what the light curtain indicates is sufficient for such environment that we are dealing with in this case. And because the forklift operator is going to be at a height and will have a better side of view, in that case, the light curtain indication is sufficient for that for the forklift driver to reset the machine. Then we talk about, so far I took small examples to understand the compliance requirement and the machine design requirements as far as the safety components are concerned. But now I would also want to talk about large size automated warehousing, as an example. So in one of the pictures Josh also showed, automated warehousing. In this case, also I have an example showed where bunch of safety fence is being used, and many guard door areas are going to be accessed, and you have multiple different zones, meaning if one area is interrupted by a machine operator to fix a pallet that's been fallen, or a stack that has been fallen down. In that case, you need to go inside different hazardous areas and interrupt different zones. So here we are talking about multiple zones, multiple different safety devices or the safety measures that have been applied. That means obviously the preset function could be very critical, and you might have to have it in all places where you have an access door with a gate interlock. So things can start to get very complicated, and as soon as things can start to get very complicated from the risk assessment and the compliance requirement, the machine designers or the safety designers look for solutions that are easy to implement. It has to have a quick and simple wiring, easy to series connect, easy to use different type of components in the safety system, or series connect different type of safety devices in a system. Uh, as soon as things start to get complicated, things also start to get expensive, and that's why cost optimization is something also a designer is looking for. Also in some cases you have to have an adaptable system. So if you have a machine builder that gave you something, now you have to integrate another integrators or another machine builder's machine, and now integrator has to work around something where both system has to be adaptable from one machine builder to another machine builder. Some areas require certain environmental ratings. So to mix everything, now a designer of a safety system has another challenge to meet. And traditionally, what we have seen is designers have adapted, a series wiring of standard dry contact devices and going into a safety relay and monitoring that safety function. And for the purpose of the diagnostics, they've taken one contact back into the standard PLC, so you know which door is open, which emergency stop is actuated. This is good, but it's not good when you have to troubleshoot something. When it starts to get complicated, as soon as you introduce complexity, different zones, different reset function, different preset functions, in that case, the traditional design doesn't work quite effectively, and that's why we have to scale a solution. The designer has to think about it, which way he or she needs to go. How many safety functions do I have? What are the safety functions? Is it a light curtain? Is it a safety foot switch? Is it an emergency stop device? Is it a gate interlock? Is it a solenoid interlock? what type of safety function do I need to apply? Then also something that they also need to consider is machine availability. When a fault occurs, how quickly can I diagnose a fault, and how quickly can I show that on an HMI? If an HMI is not available, what options do I have? These are some of the things that the designer has to consider when designing a safety system. And also sometimes when this complexity of the safety function is so high, or you have too many zone controls, then you may have to increase your diagnostics to understand what is going on. And that's why the details of the diagnostic is also important. That way, if there's any error in the safety system, you can troubleshoot or get to the problem quite efficiently and effectively. So here's a typical, problem that designer run into when they're using series connection. They run into a problem called fault masking, because when you series connect devices and you have a short circuit or cross short, where fault can accumulate and create a problem in your safety system. In that case, this fault masking can even make your system dangerous in a sense where machine operator opens the door and machine could still be running, because series connection, if you have a cross short, the cross short can simply be masked based on the principle the series connection and the safety circuit works on. You could have a big problem with fault masking. In that case, basic solutions can be applied. So that's what I was talking about when we talk about different type of solutions. Here I have an example with a single zone where a safety relay type device, which is actually an input expansion module, is being used, and multiple different sensors are being wired, and they're taken back into a safety relay or a safety PLC input. And also the diagnostics is being taken into a safety PLC, a standard PLC, which is what you see. Take my laser pointer. So this is a standard PLC, this is a safety PLC, this is a safety relay. Safety circuit for the sensors goes into a safety relay or a safety PLC, and then the diagnostics go back in for individual diagnostics of the devices. If the devices are open or closed is being determined by the diagnostics output going into a PLC, a standard PLC. So you can throw that on an HMI for the status. So here's an example where you may have a requirement to monitor a safety function of an emergency stop, safety function of a coded magnet sensor, a light curtain, a solenoid locking switch, and another electronic sensor. So here we can use such basic solution to monitor so many components and still comply with the highest requirement of Category 4 Performance Level E. So these type of requirements are very common in applications that are basic. Customer doesn't want to expand too much resources in designing, and doesn't want to create so sophisticated system. In that case, basic things can be created with input expansion module and a safety relay combination, where both combination of both solutions can create quite a bit of good system. In this case, we have about 8 components that are wired together in 2 small 22 millimeter safety relays. I think it's quite a good solution for small size machine still with certain complexity as far as the number of devices are concerned. So solutions like this can be applied. Another solution that we have here is passive distribution module that works with our electronic sensors. When you're using electronic sensors, those require certain type of fusing for individual sensors. That means more panel space requirement in the panel. Obviously, these type of sensors, the electronic sensors, raise your performance level and machine availability quite well because of the internal diagnostics capabilities it has. But like I said, it comes with challenges of wiring them in the cabinet, and that's why we have brought passive distribution modules that can reside in the field, especially for those applications that has a requirement for IP69K, and you have a junction box that's high pressure washdown junction box, and you can implement these passive distribution modules, so you can series connect them in the field. Fusing is not a problem because the fusing is done on these modules, and you will meet the requirements not only from the safety perspective, but from the electrical perspective as well, or the electrical safety perspective as well, with the integrated fusing. So quick and easy wiring solution that can be applied for electronic sensors, that increases the safety level, that increases the diagnostics level because of self-monitoring and giving you the diagnostics of the device itself. And these type of installation systems can help you build a better system. Another option in the same line where everything becomes quick connect. Great solution with an IP67 rating, and everything becomes quick connect solution as far as the sensors are concerned. They can be wired in the field, and they're quick connect with an M12 connection from sensor to the passive field box. And this is an I/O solution. So if you see, we have the sensors connected, 4 sensors per module. Then each module has diagnostics going back into the PLC. And in the case of locking type devices, you are having also lock-unlock signal coming from the process PLC to lock these devices in place. And you can have a series connection, so you can have a single zone, or you can create zone control as well with this type of solutions. Again, if you have more, if you have a need for more detail in these type of solutions, we can discuss, or you can discuss it with Heitek as well. So once again, what that designer is looking for: comply with the safety requirement, and comply, and also ease of designing. So quick connect and simple wiring, more diagnostics, easy to install because of the quick connect solution. And that's where somewhat more basic solutions are required. That's what we can talk about so far. But now, if your complexity increases to even more complex or more safety functions, more than 10 safety functions, in that case, you have to understand the scaling again. And that's why solutions like programmable controllers, such as in this case, we have a programmable safety controller, PSC1, that can support these type of systems and these type of applications, which has, so first of all, it's programmable. So obviously logic can be created, and you can create different zones, different areas, preset, reset functions for different doors. All those type of functions can be applied and programmed. But one of the main thing is it supports to your higher level PLC programming. So if you need communication to the higher level PLC for diagnostics of these devices that you have wired into the safety PLC, they can be communicated back into the higher level PLC. In case of Siemens, you have the Profinet option. You also have a possibility with Profi Safe over Profinet. So that's also an option that you have available. You have Ethernet IP with Rockwell PLCs, EtherCAT with multiple different users of the PLCs that make process PLCs. In that case, the FB1 option can help you communicate diagnostics back to the higher level PLC. So NHMI can have more details of the devices that are wired to the programmable controller or safety programmable controller. So FB2 option can do different, commonly used communication protocols as well. Then also, because if the things can get modular, then also we have remote IO communication that can be decentralized. So the IOs can be 50 feet away, where it's part, you just have a 50 feet of conveyor, and then you have another area that needs to be protected that may have a muting light curtain, a palletizer connected with a stretch wrapper, and then a long conveyor belt. In that case, decentralized applications can be solved with remote IO modules that communicates over Ethernet. So these can be also a good solution, part of the programmable safety controller. Another option also you have with modular systems or multiple machines that are connected to a line, an entire line. Those type of applications can be also solved with safe master-to-master communication, where you can communicate IOs of master functions like an emergency stop. If an emergency stop in machine 4 is actuated, machine 1 also needs to stop because it needs to stop producing the parts, and all that type of critical safe communication can be done as well with this type of system. So as I said, more complexity, you will have to have more sophisticated solution in case of ease of implementation as well as ease of machine availability for any diagnostics. Another safety function, safe monitoring, safe drive monitoring, safe limited speed, safe limited increment. All those type of functions can be applied for, instead of driving those functions from a safety rated drive, you can drive that from a safety PLC. So again, cost reduction, the cost optimization can happen if these type of functions are applied with the programmable controller, because you don't need a safety rated drive systems in that case. That's an example. Another way of cost optimization and machine availability is where and you might have heard of Industry 4.0 by now. More details of the devices, the sensors, not just door open or close. It could be cross short between the wires of that specific sensor. Temperature is too high. Actuator is out of limit, meaning it's close to being misalignment. Defective actuator. All these different types of detailed diagnostics can be observed by this, what we call a serial diagnostics function that's available in our electronic sensors. With the electronic sensors, we can do this serial diagnostics function. Also, not only the diagnostics, but also your locking and unlocking can be done via the serial diagnostics, because this serial diagnostics is a single conductor that carries 2-byte data, and it's still a performance level E system because we are not talking about anything with safety. It's strictly diagnostics, and you can still be a performance level E system when utilizing serial diagnostics. Troubleshooting becomes easier because of the amount of information available to you. Avoidance of unscheduled downtime, because you know exactly where the problem is, what the problem is. All these type of implementation of the system, it's quite smooth because we have the possible installation systems available, which I'm going to talk to you about, and also you can communicate the serial diagnostics with the PSC1 or programmable safety controller that we have. So different ways of implementing serial diagnostics, or different ways of wiring serial diagnostics, which two of the ways we already talked about. The one way is the PDM. The version that I showed you earlier is the IO version. Here is the serial diagnostics version. Same idea with the PFB. We have the passive field box that's IP67 rated. And that also can be implemented with serial diagnostics. And we also have the Y adapter. The Y adapter can also be a very quick, easy to implement solution for the installation system of the SD devices. So here, as you can notice, the safety series connected, going into a safety relay or a safety PLC, and the diagnostics in this case, if you see, it's series connected, and also the power is series connected, and your serial diagnostics is controlled by the higher level PLC for any diagnostics information that needs to be read back to an HMI. And so the machine operator has an available information regarding these sensors. So it meets the requirements of not only the higher machine availability, ease of installation, but also the concept of Industry 4.0 that allows you to push information back into a higher level PLC or into a cloud system. So this is the PDM, which also can do the serial diagnostics. In the case of IP69 type requirement or high pressure washdown requirement, these modules can sit outside the main panel, in the field, in a junction box, and you can still series connect or series wire these devices and get detailed diagnostics, as I talked about. Here's another option. We have two options, IP69K or IP67. Either of the options are available with the Y connectors. We have also the system engineering tool available, which will give you a parts list based on how you build your system, the distance between Y connectors, or the distance between the PFB or the PDM. You can configure different systems via this software tool available that's online, is on systemengineeringtool.com. And it would give you a BOM for all the cables and sensors that are needed for the application. And you will do the voltage calculations for the cable cross sections as well in this tool. So makes it easier. And remember, from the beginning, I talked about as soon as the system starts to get bigger, certain things are going to be complicated, but we are here to make it easier. And these are the things that are available to the engineers to make your make your system design much easier. So all in all, if we talk about all these type of devices that I talked about, you're creating a complete system. The serial diagnostics here, where the devices are connected, where multiple devices series connected. There are some areas where individual doors needs to be monitored because they're in different zones. Emergency stops, reset buttons, the drives with the STO function. All of these can be wired and programmed into a solution like a programmable controller when the system design is complicated, but here it makes it easier. And also communication to the higher level PLC, so the HMI can give you status of all these devices that are connected on the PSC1. So here's a complete solution that now everything that I talked about so far is coming together. But we are not done yet, because the systems that I talked about are safety separated. What if you have systems that are safety integrated? So for an example, you have, you're not using our programmable controller, safety programmable controller, PSC1. In the case when you have an integrated safety PLC, for an example, an S7 from Siemens, or the 1200 with safety built in. Well, if the safety is built in, and if you still want to implement, programming, or the devices that are out in the field, or the safety devices that are out in the field, with an ease, there are two systems available. Number one system is what it's called is AS interface. This is a technology that has been around for a long time, proven technology, especially in the warehousing industry. Automated warehousing industry uses this a lot because of its flexibility. All the devices that are connected on the AS interface network, it could be a safety, or they could be non-safety rated devices. And they can be integrated in a system. Generally, an Aussie master allows you to connect. Generally, it has a dual master, so it allows you to connect full addresses, or full addresses are also safety devices. You can connect up to 60 on an Aussie master, or the ASI master, with a safety integrated to it. And also with a safety integrated system, you can communicate the safety signal back to a higher level PLC that also is working on an architecture that's safety rated. In this case, a Profibus system or Profinet system that would allow you to communicate safe signal, so you can communicate to a drive that's communicating over Profinet, ProfiSafe. So safety integrated systems can can be useful. AS interface also is available with safety separated systems. So as I talked to you about earlier with a programmable safety controller, here the ASI master with a safety monitor, where safety monitor takes this safety logic program for the safety devices, and you can communicate the device status back into the a controller or PLC, so you can show it on an HMI. So this is another safety integrated or safety separated solution. Another solution with safety integrated we have is the safety field box. Sorry, with Profinet ProfiSafe. Here, it allows you to connect up to 8 devices per. Basically, it's a safety I/O port that's quick connect. So it allows you to connect multiple devices, or up to 8 devices per block, and you can series connect these blocks, and all devices can be in a different zone, so they can have its own safety function. and you can lock and unlock the switch via same quick connect cable, which is taking the safety inputs back to the FCPU. And we have this concept available with Profinet ProfiSafe right now. There are other field communication will be available in next 1 or 2 years. So this is another application that is on a safety network, and it is a safety integrated solution because you have a process PLC that is also a safety PLC, and it has safety functions. All the logics are done here, and these are connected in the field. We have quick connect solution, and you can implement such safety integrated solutions as well. So in saying that, like I said about Industry 4.0, there are more developments happening, more information going back into the cloud, such as an OPC UA cloud. Our programmable safety controller also has this possibility to communicate information, and all this information can go back into the cloud with OPC UA. You can create MES systems, which allows certain type of diagnostics from the production perspective, what needs to be taken care of. Pre-maintenance schedules can be generated. All this type of information can be generated via simple sensors to programmable controller to the cloud and create an algorithm, and so on and so forth. This is a subject on its own, but these possibilities are also available from a systems perspective from us. So in overall, what I talked about, a complete solution from SCHMERSAL, what Josh talked about in the beginning, safety guarding, the network type of solutions, such as the IS interface, such as the Profinet ProfiSafe IO communication, such as our programmable safety controller that can communicate, and in the future, IO-Link Safety will be available, and more new systems will be created by us to make your life easier, so the things can be implemented easily in your system to comply with the requirements. In that case, compliance is a big thing, and as I mentioned to you about risk assessment, certain techniques which I talked about, such as safe distance calculations, etc., etc. And those are obviously can get very overwhelming. In that case, I would like to transfer our next presenter, Devin Murray, who will be talking about our consulting services in greater detail, so how it can also be part of the systems and solution.
Thanks, Kartik. Real quick, I do want to pause here for any Q&A. We did have a couple questions come in.
Sure.
How does remote I/O for the safety PLC communicate with the base module, and does it use an IP address?
Good question. It's actually using an IP address, but it's actually a MAC address. So when you are programming the base module for the remote I/O, you have to enter a serial number. That serial number is basically the remote I/O module's MAC address. And as you saw, the remote I/O is communicating over Ethernet. So basically, you're communicating to that specific MAC address for the remote I/O, and that's how basically the remote I/O is communicating to the base module over Ethernet with a MAC address, not an IP address. So it's not an IP based communication, but it's MAC address based communication.
Excellent. The next question, do I need specific types of devices to use it on Safety Fieldbox or Profinet?
No. Sorry, I didn't mention that actually. But yeah, those, the ProfiSafe IO modules that you saw that can take up to 8 devices, those devices can be any type of device. It doesn't need to be, for an example, an ACE interface type of device. You need specific ASI type device because it has an integrated chip inside. Here with the Profinet, Profinet ProfiSafe solution, the devices doesn't have to be smart because our IO box is smart. That can communicate to the network. So any devices can be used. Generally, with the safety sensors or safety devices that are available from us, the quick connect communication is quite easy because the cables or the conductors are laid out to configure with our devices. But any devices, even from a competitor, can be used with those type of system.
Great. And I think we do have one more. How many devices can I have on an ASI network?
Yeah, like I mentioned, there's with an ASI master, you can have up to full address 62 devices. So safety devices, you can have 62, but non-safety rated devices, for an example, a proximity sensor, for an example, a push button station, those devices only need half an address. So you have a address and a B address. So you can have a 1B, 1A, and one can have a proximity switch. One can have a push button station. But if it's an emergency stop, it requires a full address. So then you will be engaging 2 or 3 or 4 in on the network. So technically, full address, you have 62 available with one ASI master. But just like what you saw with our safety PLC, you can communicate safe master to master. You can also have a possibility to communicate your ASI master to ASI master. So you can have a lot more devices. Technically, you can have up to 1942 full addresses available. So 1900 devices with full address will be available if the system needs it.
All right. Thanks, Kartik. Devin,
Perfect.
over to
Thank
you.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my screen again. Let me know if you can see it once it pop it up here. Let me know if we're good to go.
Good to go.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. My name is Devin Murray. I am the manager for the engineering services side of SCHMERSAL called tec.nicum. And this presentation will go over exactly what tec.nicum is and everything that we offer. It's again a separate division of SCHMERSAL, but it complements everything that Josh and Kartik has gone over, right? Kartik and both in Josh's presentation also, you saw a lot of safety standards, right? And with a lot of safety standards, there may be, two different, reactions to seeing all those standards. And one may be a sense of, reassurance, okay, this safety company follow these safety standards. This is what we need. This is what our customer needs for products and solutions, right? And then there may be another reaction of, being overwhelmed, right? What are these standards? And how do we meet them? Do we need to meet these standards? And that's one instance where where tec.nicum comes in and again complements everything that we saw so far as products and solutions. Now what you'll see on my PowerPoint slides here is both tec.nicum name and the SCHMERSAL name. And again, tec.nicum is just a subdivision of SCHMERSAL. So it still is SCHMERSAL, right? But we wear a different hat. And the main reason behind that is, when we go talk to customers, when we are offering solutions, we're doing training, we want to make sure that you are comfortable that we're not going in there to just promote SCHMERSAL components and solutions, right? When you or your customer have a specific requirement issue, a specific question about an application, you want to know how to solve it more or less. You don't want to say, okay, what can SCHMERSAL do for me at this time, right? So that's where we come in. and we have an unbiased approach. Okay, so what you'll see is a tagline powered by Schmersal, because the Technicum name itself, it's relatively new. Right, so Technicum was launched in 2016, but what we do within Technicum, we've been doing since the inception of Schmersal, right? And North America, that was 1996, and the Schmersal group and all has been established back since 1945, right? So everything that we do within Technicum, we've been doing. Right? This is what we do, and I'll go over what we do in just a minute, right? But this is part of Technicum, right? So we are part of Schmersal. And because Schmersal is a global company, well, so is Technicum. Right? So whether we are an international customer or just locally, we have that range to accommodate both. All right. And when you look at Schmersal and the Technicum group overall, within the Schmersal group globally, right, there's a little under 2,000 employees, that direct employees for the Schmersal name, and within that there are 80 full-time Technicum engineers. Okay, so there may be some dedicated Schmersal employees that have that TUV functional safety engineer that can also assist within the Technicum division. But we also have individuals that only do Technicum services, and that number globally is about 80. Okay, and again, we can lean on other Schmersal employees and engineers to help within the Technicum services realm. Okay, and again, what do we offer within Technicum? Okay, so when we look at our services, we can divide them into our 4 pillars. All right, and that would include the academy, consultancy, engineering, and integration. And what I'm going to do real quickly within the remaining time is go over each one of these pillars, to go over what we offer as far as engineering services, and then hopefully there'll still be some time for a quick Q&A if any questions come up. Okay, so the first pillar that I want to focus on is the academy. And when we first launched Technicum, this was our bread and butter. This is what we wanted to focus on, the training, making sure that we can educate customers on these different safety aspects. And since we started within Technicum, our portfolio for training has continued to grow. And I just wanted to list some of those trainings that we offer. Starting with the OSHA 10 and 30-hour course. And this is the official OSHA course. So at the end of either the 10 or the 30-hour training session, you would get the official ID card from OSHA, just stating that you have completed the 10 or 30-hour course. Okay, so this is presented by our in-house OSHA trainer. So he had to go through the, train the trainer through OSHA, and we are able to offer this official OSHA course. And there's some benefits for going through, a company like Technicum and Schmersal to have this OSHA training, as opposed to maybe some other companies that promote OSHA training, but it's not the official OSHA course. So you may not get that official OSHA card. Or if you are waiting for OSHA themselves to provide the training, they do not go to the customer site, right? So they have regional trainings where you now have to send your employees out to wherever the region is, wherever the location is. May have to also end up spending money for room and board and travel expenses. Whereas for us, the only thing you would be paying for essentially is having the instructor go out for the 10-hour or 30-hour course for your individual site. So there's some benefits from getting the OSHA training directly from Technicum. We also offer a general machine guarding training, which is a 7 or 8 hour course. going over the concepts behind machine safety and the different standards and requirements that are within the industry. And again, when we look at, our services and this training, we're going in there with our technicum hat on. So we're not talking about Schmersal products. The entire training is about industry solutions. And we get a lot of positive feedback from all of our trainings, but really with this one, because when we go in there, again, we talk about everything that you need or you can look for within the industry for machine safety. Okay. We also provide training on the risk assessment process. So this is a 2-day training where we go over the theory behind the risk assessment. For individual companies, we would help develop a risk assessment template. And then we will also do an actual risk assessment based off of that template that we created with you. So at the end of the 2 days, you'll have the concept, the theory behind the risk assessment. You'll have a template to use internally, as well as that one assessment that we would do together under your belt. I try to say, okay, do the general machine guarding training first, so you have that background, and then we roll into the risk assessment training. But there isn't really a deadline, a dead fast prerequisite. But it helps, right? Another training that we offer is safety circuit and wiring. So this kind of takes everything that we go over within the general machine gun training, where we look at the theories and the principles behind machine safety. And with this training, we now give a hands-on approach. So we talk about the different type of categories, different type of design architecture for our safety circuits, different types of scenarios, and then we actually have you wire it up. Okay, so this is a full hands-on course, a few slides or PowerPoint, but everything else is hands-on to get you familiar and help you understand what those safety requirements are. ISO 13849, you may be familiar with that. It's a safety standard that looks at the safety functions of a machine. And pretty much says, okay, how reliable is your safety circuit? And you have to do certain calculations to determine what that performance level is, how reliable that circuit is. So this training, again, is another 7-8 hour training where we go over the concepts, the theory behind the standard, but then we also provide some hands-on calculations. Right? So by the end of the training, you'll be able to do a calculation on a safety function to determine the performance level to ISO 13849. We also provide training for CE. So if you have machines going over to Europe that have to have the CE mark, this is a self-certifying declaration. So we provide training so that you understand what you need, what that process is, so that you can self-certify the equipment to be CE as you send it over to Europe. We also provide custom training. So we can take any of the training that I just listed and modify it to your particular needs, or we can have a training from scratch to meet your particular needs, whether it's you have a company safety standard that you want us to train your employees on. Well, we can do that also. We just did a custom training a few weeks ago. We had a request for understanding how to read safety circuits, right? So how to read schematics. And this was more for, EHS personnel who aren't really engineers, but they need to have an understanding of, what they're looking at. So this was a real, basic entry-level introduction to schematics. What are you looking for? What does a category 3, category 4 circuit look like? So they asked for that. We created a training based off that. Right, so we can do custom materials. There are some things coming down the pipeline. So training on the cobots, okay, how to properly safeguard a collaborative robot. And also we do have a online LMS, learning management system, that's also in the process of being developed, and that should be launching beginning of next year. So everything that listed so far is live training, whether it's through a webinar. Some of these are in person, majorities are just live on the webinar. The online academy will then offer the ability for a self-paced learning at your leisure. Right, so that's the training portion of it for engineering services. Our pillar for that. We're looking to consultancy. Okay, what are we offering with that? Kartik mentioned it already. The idea of the risk assessment. Right, so we saw some of these solutions, some of the products with the fencing. The very first step is the risk assessment. Right? You have to know what your hazards are before you can begin trying to find solutions. Right. So tec.nicum, we provide a risk analysis. By default, we based off of ISO 12100. Where we look at the either hazard-based analysis or a task-based analysis on the machine. We can also do an analysis based off of ISO 13849 or a collaborative robot risk analysis based off ISO 15066 or RA 1506. So this is a few minor differences between those two standards. And again, if you're not aware of the customer, not aware of what standard they may need to apply for the risk analysis, again, we can help determine what you need also. All right. But for the ISO 12100 general machine risk analysis, what we do differently than a lot of our competitors is that we look at a full schematic review. Right, so we just don't look at the machine and say, okay, you need a guard here or a light curtain there. We dive into the schematics. So the electrical, hydraulic, pneumatics. We see where you are with the safety and where you may need to be and provide general recommendations. We also, as part of the recommendations, we classify a hazard with a HRN or a hazard rating number, and then we provide a control measure, right, some type of remediation, and then we provide what that HRN would be once you apply that control measure, right? And again, we are going in there, with an unbiased approach. So even when we offer control measures, we're saying, okay, you have a nip point hazard or rotating element, provide a hard guard, okay, or you have a access guard that's not being monitored, provide make sure you have a guard door interlock here. And then we may also say, okay, for this particular safety function, it should be a category 3 performance level D. But we're not telling you which components you need to use. But then we're not saying, okay, make sure you use this Schmersal light curtain or make sure you use this, Schmersal E-stop. But that Schmersal mix component, right? So if that is a request, of course, we can easily, help provide a bill of material. But just, that first step, that analysis, where you just need to know, okay, what's wrong? How do we address it? This is what you need from your risk assessment, and this is what we provide. Okay. In addition to the ISO 12100 general risk analysis, again, we do also provide the risk analysis for cobot applications. This is something that we launched this year. An example of what an assessment looks like from the tec.nicum division. You'll see that this will be based off of a checklist approach where we developed a set of questions that adhere to, again, ISO 12100, or if we're looking at cobots, we're looking at the cobot standard. If we're looking at something else, a press or whatever, we look at those particular standards. But we have questions that are based off of the requirements for a particular standard. And we assess the machine for any findings that we flag. We provide this hazard rated number so that you can easily sort out what hazards may need to be addressed first, or whether it's the most hazardous or maybe some of the low hanging fruit. but you need to have a HRN so you can quantify these hazards. So we provide that for you. And again, we provide a control measure, how to remediate those hazards, and then what the HRN would be after that. Okay. Whenever there's pictures associated with a finding, we take them. That gets extracted within this PDF of the report. Whenever we identify a safety function, and we say, okay, you make sure you have an e-stop or a light curtain, whatever the case may be, we also take the next step and say, based off of our initial observation, the safety circuit should meet performance level C, right, or performance level D. Or if it's based off of a particular safety standard, we'll say, okay, based off of whatever standard we're looking at, the e-stop circuit should be performance level D. Okay, so we do provide as much guidance as we can with our deliverables. And then the last thing that you would receive from the risk assessment or the risk analysis would be an Excel file. So again, that you can easily sort out the different findings that we've identified. Okay. Also within this consultancy pillar, again, a service that we've always provided as far as guidance and support, whether it's, trying to be proactive or unfortunately after an injury, after an OSHA violation, we provide that support. Right? So now we just have a name for it, OSHA violation remediation support, where we can go in, try to dissect what happened, try to, interpret what the violation is, what that citation is, and then provide some guidance on how to correct it. Because we are on site, we can also do a walk around to help, catch anything else that may pop up later on from an OSHA inspection. So, we have that capability. So while we are on site, looking at whatever violation is there, we can also, help make sure that there aren't any violations down the road. Again, going back to ISO 13849, where we look at the safety functions of a machine. In order to prove out what that safety function is, you do have to do some calculations. And one of the software that you can use to do the calculations is SCHMERSAL. Okay, that's a free software that's been created by Europe. You'll see many safety manufacturers have their components a part of a library for SCHMERSAL. So it's a well-known program. But what we do in tec.nicum is we look at the safety functions, whether you are, upgrading an existing machine or you need us to talk to the OEM for a new machine coming in, where you need those safety functions to be calculated and validated, we can do that. Okay, and every calculation that we do, we provide, again, a full report, a deliverable. The OEM has it, or you have it, or both, whatever the situation is. You have that as part of your machine documentation. Okay. We also help provide guidance on a internal safety policy. Okay, so again, whether you're a global, company or just national, but you want to have a safety guidance in place, we have done this before, and this is a service that we offer, where we have this open communication of what you need, what are you looking for, what machines do you have on the floor or throughout your organization. Let's help develop a safety procedure, a policy to say, okay, what are our safety function requirements are for a minimum? How do those safety functions look? What are some examples? So you see here on the slide, part of the policy that's created, we do provide, example schematics. Again, we are a safety company, so if you want to go ahead and say, okay, let's provide some examples of a bill of material for these safety functions, easy enough, we can provide that as well. And so just one document that you can refer back to for, again, existing machines or new machines coming in, just to make sure that it's up to par both to, local requirements as well as your company safety requirements. The last thing within this pillar is CE. Again, so we provide not only just the training for CE, but also providing that guidance, again, because this is a self-declaration, but providing that guidance every step of the way to make sure that your machine will be compliant and you can declare it as CE compliant so you can send it over to Europe. And that also does include EMC testing where needed to follow the EMC directive. Okay. One of the requirements for meeting the CE is that you have to have a technical file held by your company within Europe. And if you do not have a representative in Europe, we can be that representative. Okay, so just some things to keep in mind for those who may find themselves, deeply involved within the CE. Going into the engineering pillar, again, going back to ISO 13849. So we do the training on it. We do the calculations for your performance levels. The last step, which is seen in ISO 13849-2, says you have to physically validate the safety functions, which means you have to introduce faults to the system. So one thing that we do is we look at the schematics, we dissect the safety functions, we determine what type of faults are needed to prove out the system. We create a test plan, and then we can either deliver the test plan to the customer and they can check themselves, or we fly on site with our plan and we introduce the faults with you to prove out the safety functions as called out by ISO 13849. Cardi mentioned this also. I believe Josh did too. When you look at hard guarding, or if we look at like light curtains and safety mats, two-hand controls, safety devices where there are no physical barriers. You have to know how far you can pit this device so that once it's triggered, by the time you reach the hazard, you're not exposed to any dangerous conditions. Right? So you need to do a time stop analysis. So this is a service that we offer. And the reason you have to do a time stop analysis is because you then have to do a safe distance calculation. All right, so you need to know what the reaction time is of the safety components in the machine, and then you tie that into a formula. So we provide that service to help confirm that the safety devices are at the right distance. When you look into the collaborative robot, there are a few different measures to make sure that it is a safe application. One of the methods that are allowed would be safe force and pressure. Right? So if you have a cobot that has the possibility to come into contact with an operator, you have to make sure that that contact does not exceed certain pressures and forces. Right? So we do provide the testing of those forces, whether it's from ISO TS 15066 or RIA 15.806. Again, we can help you determine which one of those you need to adhere to. But we provide that measurement, and then that measurement, of course, will be provided in a deliverable report. Again, going back to solutions, Cardi spoke about safety POCs and programming. Well, part of tec.nicum, we also provide support on programming, and this would be the only time where you see a hardline connection between tec.nicum and Schmersal, because the only real support that we provide for programming would be the Schmersal PLC one, right? So yes, we're unbiased, but we would not be programming an Omron PLC, right? Allen Bradley PLC. But again, we can provide this support. lastly, within this pillar, we do schematic review, whether it's, again, working with the OEM to make sure that they meet the requirements, or, working with the end user to help design schematics, or just a quick review. You guys went through some training. Now you're doing some upgrades. You want us to just look at some schematics? No problem. We can do that also. We can also develop schematics. So you have a scenario. Again, you're doing some upgrades, or you're talking to the OEM, and you have an idea of a safety function and what it needs to be. Not quite sure how to get there. We can actually develop the safety schematics as a deliverable. The last pillar, which will be integration, we provide integration. So again, if you look through the entire process, if we say, okay, let's do some training, and then we say, okay, let's do a risk analysis, we go on site, do analysis, point out the hazards, and then the next step would be, okay, let's help remediate some of these hazards. So let's do some safety upgrades. So we do provide this service for safety upgrades. Okay, for that we rely on local integrators, but we do provide that service. There may be a situation where you have a integrator that you use already. You're comfortable with that integrator, and you want to use them to do the safety upgrades. That's fine, but maybe they're not that versed in safety, right? So integrators, they're great. They can program a machine, add automations to it, but when it gets to the safety, that may not be their specialty, so they need some guidance. So that's when we can step in for what we call safety integration management, just to help provide, again, that guidance, that resource for the safety aspect of it. And whether it's with an integrator that we partner with already, or somebody that the end user feels comfortable with, because the tec.nicum name will be attached to it. Everything will be reviewed for those safety requirements, and they'll be signed off at the end of the day, from tec.nicum, as being approved to meet the requirements as called out. Okay. So just a real quick, general overview of tec.nicum and everything that we offer, from the academy, consultancy, engineering, and integration. Again, just a division that complements, everything that you saw already from Kartik and Josh. Yes, we are a safety component company, but we're more than that, right? We offer safety solutions, right? And we're even more than that. We provide guidance and support to help guide you through these requirements for machine safety. And with that,
right.
Yep, I'll see if there's any questions. I know we ran over just a little bit.
Yep, we did have a couple of questions come in. We did run over just a little bit. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. Is Schmersal tec.nicum able to conduct risk assessments specifically to press standards?
Yes. Yes, we can. I mean, honestly, based off of our software, we can develop a checklist question to meet any safety standard. If we're looking at safety standards specifically for presses, definitely yes. We just need a standard, look at what the requirements are, and we can do an assessment based off any safety standard, pretty much. But yes.
All right. Is a risk assessment needed for a true collaborative robot with built-in safe monitoring?
Definitely yes, and that's a large misconception about collaborative robots. People buy it and they install it and they say, okay, the collaborative robot, it's inherently safe, but you definitely do need a risk assessment on a cobot. I can't stress that enough. When we look inside the standards, it'll tell you still need to do a risk assessment. So yes, for sure.
Excellent. And for Schmersal, is there any plans for in-person trainings?
Yes, there will be plans to move back to in-person training because virtual training has worked out and we still continue to get positive feedback. We will continue to offer that for those customers that want to continue with virtual training, whether it's to keep costs down for travel expenses, we can still do that. But come the new year, when we go back to some form of normalcy, right? We will open back up the possibility for in-person training, but we will continue to offer the option for virtual training as well.
Awesome. And last question: does Schmersal offer certifications following the training?
Great question. We get asked that a lot. As far as certifications, the only thing that I can say right now is that we are in the process of exploring the certification side of it. So I don't want to speak too far to mention to that one. But what I can speak on is that we are in the process of applying for accreditation for continuous educational units. So for those safety professionals who require a certain amount of educational hours throughout the year to maintain that certification, we are actively in the process of having our courses accredited so that we can offer those CEUs where required.
Awesome. Well, that does conclude us. I just want to quickly throw my screen up. I believe you could see that. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I can see it.
it shut off for a second.
It went away yet. There you go.
Anyways, I want to thank Josh, Devin, and Heitek and Schmersal and SATECH for partnering with Heitek Automation to present this information. Thank you guys for the education and your insight. And to our guests, thank you guys for your questions and your participation. We hope that you guys found this information valuable. That does conclude our webinar. This is all